My wife and best friend were in bed. He saw me and smirked, but when I said, "I just sent your video," you won't believe what I walked in on my wife and best friend in bed. And they had no idea I was there. It was like my whole world crumbled in an instant. Stick around to find out how I turned this gut-wrenching betrayal into a calculated revenge plan. You think you know what's coming? Wait until you hear how I got even and how they didn't see it coming. You won't want to miss the shocking twist at the end. I remember it like it was yesterday, the kind of day that started off like any other. But by the end, my life had completely unraveled. I woke up early, as I always do, the soft buzz of my alarm dragging me out of sleep at exactly 5:30 am. The day ahead was already set in motion. Another round of client meetings, a pile of legal briefs to go through, and endless phone calls. Being a lawyer, the work never stopped, but that was the thing, I had gotten used to it. It was routine. Predictable. I thrived in that kind of chaos, even though part of me longed for a break from the grind. But as always, I had a purpose, a drive to succeed, to build something that was mine, something solid. It was always about the future that I envisioned with Lily. We had been together for 6 years, and I honestly thought we had everything figured out. Our relationship was the rock in my life, unshakable. At least, that's what I told myself every day. By noon, I had wrapped up most of the pressing issues at work, my mind drifting to Lily. It had been a while since we had a moment to ourselves. I'd been buried in deadlines, and she had her own things going on. But today, the stars seemed to align. My afternoon meetings were canceled, an unexpected twist in my otherwise structured schedule. I felt a surge of excitement. Maybe I could surprise her with lunch, something simple, something spontaneous. I hadn't done that in ages, and the thought of seeing her smile made the stress of work melt away for a few minutes. I grabbed my keys and headed for the car. The drive home was quick, the streets unusually clear for a Tuesday afternoon. As I pulled into the driveway, something caught my eye. A car, one I didn't recognize, was parked right in front of the house. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe it was just a visitor, or a neighbor stopping by. But something in the pit of my stomach told me otherwise. It wasn't just any car, it was Alex's. Alex. My best friend. The guy I trusted more than anyone else. The one who had been by my side through thick and thin. But seeing his car there, parked like it belonged, set off something in my gut. I brushed it off, convincing myself that maybe I was overthinking it. He had stopped by before, no big deal. But as I stepped out of the car and walked toward the door, a strange unease settled deeper into me. The house was eerily quiet. Normally, there was some kind of sound, Lily's music, the TV, on in the background. Maybe even her talking to herself as she moved around. But not today. The silence was unsettling, more oppressive than I had expected. I called out for her, the way I always did when I got home. "Lily?" No response. "Lily?" I called again, a little louder this time. Still nothing. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe she was busy in another room, or on the phone. Or maybe she had just stepped out. But the silence. It was off. It felt wrong. I climbed the stairs slowly, my mind not quite catching up with my feet. Each step felt heavier, as if the weight of what was coming had already begun to press down on me. Then, I heard it. A muffled laugh. A sound I recognized but didn't expect to hear in my own house. It wasn't Lily's laugh. My stomach churned. Something was wrong. I could feel it. My heart started pounding, and my legs felt like they were made of lead as I approached the bedroom door. The sound's laughter, soft whispers, were growing louder now. I paused for a moment, just standing there. My hand hovered over the doorknob, my mind racing. I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I was just imagining things. But then, I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of Alex's voice, followed by a quiet giggle. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew. I knew what I was about to walk into. With a shaky breath, I pushed the door open. There they were. Lily, tangled in the sheets with Alex. My best friend. My wife. In that moment, the world seemed to slow down. My heart dropped into my stomach, and I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to say, what to do. Time stood still, but their reaction wasn't frozen. Lily's face went pale, her hands scrambling to cover herself. But it was too late. It was already over. Alex, the man who had been like a brother to me, looked up at me with that smug grin of his. Like nothing had happened. She's with me now, Ethan, he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The betrayal, the lies, the trust that had been shattered in an instant. I wanted to scream, to yell, to do something. But I didn't. I couldn't. I forced the anger down, locking it away, focusing on my breathing. I couldn't lose control, not yet. If I did, if I let them see how much this hurt, they'd win. We'll see about that, I said coldly, my voice betraying none of the fury I was feeling inside. I turned and walked out of the room, the weight of the world crashing down on my shoulders. As I descended the stairs, my hands were shaking. My mind was reeling, but I didn't let them see it. I couldn't. Once outside, I leaned against the car, trying to steady my breathing. The image of them together was burned into my mind. And no matter how hard I tried to push it away, it wouldn't go. It stung. It burned. But there was no time to fall apart. Not yet. I had to think. I had to be smart. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed Lily's number. It went straight to voicemail. Of course. She wouldn't answer. I didn't leave a message. What could she possibly say to fix this? Instead, my attention shifted to Alex. I could call him, demand an explanation, scream at him. But what would that change? Nothing. He had already made it clear who he was. No, I wasn't going to give in to anger. Not yet. I had to be smarter than that. They had underestimated me. And they would pay for it. As I drove home, my mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? How many lies had they told me? How many times had I been made a fool? The questions were relentless, each one cutting deeper than the last. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't just let this slide. I couldn't just walk away. They needed to understand the consequences of their actions. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew this things had just gotten real. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Every mile that passed, every second that ticked by, my head was spinning. The image of Lily and Alex, together in my bed, kept replaying like a broken record in my mind. Each time it hit me, it felt like a new wave of anger crashing against my chest. My hands gripped the steering wheel harder, my knuckles turning white. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the lies, the deception, the fact that they had been doing this behind my back for God knows how long. And I had no clue. Not one. I pulled into the driveway. The house sitting there like a silent witness to the mess that had just unfolded. The house that I had worked so hard to make our home. The place that I thought was filled with love, with trust. The place where I was supposed to be safe. It felt like a cold shell now. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the front door. What was I supposed to do now? I couldn't just walk in there and pretend like everything was fine. I couldn't look at Lily the same way anymore. How could I? After everything? And Alex? He was supposed to be my best friend, my brother. He knew me better than anyone. Or at least, I thought he did. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Lily. I didn't even have to open it to know what it was. I didn't want to read it. What could she possibly say? I'm sorry, it's not what it looks like? That would be the cherry on top of the cake. No, I wasn't ready for her explanation. I wasn't ready for the lies. So I shoved the phone back in my pocket and walked inside. The silence hit me immediately. The same silence I had noticed earlier when I first got home. There was no music playing, no TV on, no sound of Lily humming as she cooked dinner. Just the heavy quiet that seemed to swallow the whole house. I called out for her, my voice a little more forceful than usual. Lily? No response. I took a few steps into the living room, the weight of the situation starting to press down on me. It was like a bad dream, and I was just waiting to wake up. But no matter how much I tried to shake it off, the reality was still there. I could feel it in my bones. I walked toward the stairs, my footsteps echoing through the house. Each one felt like a drumbeat in the silence, making my heart race faster. My mind was still spinning, trying to process everything that had just happened. How could this have happened? How long had they been doing this? What the hell had I missed? I reached the top of the stairs, and that's when I heard it again. A soft, muffled laugh. It wasn't Lily's. I could tell that much. My stomach twisted. I couldn't ignore it. I had to know. I couldn't stand the not knowing anymore. My feet moved on their own, carrying me down the hallway toward the bedroom. The closer I got, The clearer the voices became. A man's laugh. Lily's giggle. It was all too familiar, and yet it felt completely foreign. I stood outside the bedroom door for a moment, my hand frozen on the doorknob. What was I doing? Was I really ready to face this? I had to. I couldn't turn back now. I had to see the truth for myself. I pushed the door open slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath shallow. What I saw in that moment, God, I don't even have the words for it. There they were. Lily, my wife. Alex, my best friend. Together. In our bed. The bed that I thought was ours. The bed that I had shared with her for 6 years. It was a betrayal like no other. Time seemed to freeze. For a moment, I didn't even know if I was breathing. I stood there in the doorway, watching them scramble to cover themselves, their faces going from shock to guilt to something I couldn't even place. Lily looked like she had seen a ghost, her hands trembling as she tried to cover herself. But it was too late. The truth was already out. Alex, the guy I had trusted more than anyone in the world, the guy who had been my confidant, my brother, just looked at me. That smug look on his face. Like he had won some twisted game. She's with me now, Ethan, he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I stayed calm. I had to. I had to keep my head in this. Losing it would give him what he wanted. It would give Lily what she wanted too. I wasn't going to let them have that. Not now. Not after everything. I stared at Alex, my fists clenching at my sides. We'll see about that, I said, my voice icy. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them to their mess. Downstairs, I stood for a moment, my hands shaking. My heart was beating like a drum, but I couldn't let it show. Not yet. I had to think. I had to plan. The last thing I needed was to act on impulse. They were counting on me to fall apart. To lose it. But that wasn't going to happen. Not today. I stepped outside, the cool air hitting me like a slap in the face. The weight of the situation still hadn't fully hit me. Maybe it never would. How do you even begin to process something like this? Your wife. Your best friend. The two people you trusted the most. They had been lying to you. They had been sleeping together behind your back, and you didn't even know. I pulled out my phone and dialed Lily's number. It went straight to voicemail. No surprise there. I didn't leave a message. What could I say? Hey, what the hell is going on? No, that wasn't going to fix anything. Then, I thought of Alex. My finger hovered over his name in my contacts. I could call him. I could scream at him. I could demand an explanation. But it wouldn't change anything. I already knew what had happened. The truth was right there. It was undeniable. Instead, I stuffed my phone back into my pocket and got into my car. My thoughts were racing a mile a minute, each one more painful than the last. How long had they been doing this? How many lies had they told me? How many times had I been made a fool? My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about everything they had taken from me. I pulled out of the driveway, my mind working faster than the car could take me. I had to make them pay for this. But I couldn't do it recklessly. No, I needed a plan. They had underestimated me, and they were going to pay the price. They thought they could walk away from this unscathed. They were wrong. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I wasn't going to let them destroy everything I had worked for, everything we had built together. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. No, I was going to take control. I was going to make sure they felt the consequences of their actions. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but one thing was for sure. This was far from over. The game had just begun. I'm sure you're wondering how far will I go to make them pay. You think I've hit them with everything yet? Well, the truth is just starting to unravel. Here's the big question. Do I take the high road or completely destroy them? Comment below with your guess. Comment 1. If you think do I get my revenge? Comment 2. If you think is it too late to turn things? I had to get control of myself. The anger was burning through me, but I knew I couldn't let it take over. I couldn't let them see how much this hurt. The last thing I wanted was to give Alex and Lily the satisfaction of knowing they'd gotten to me. No. I had to be smart about this. If I acted in the heat of the moment, I'd be the one looking like the fool. I had to keep it together, plan my next steps carefully. This wasn't just some knee-jerk reaction. This was war. I sat in my car for a long while, the silence around me deafening. My mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. How long had they been doing this? How could Lily, my wife, betray me like this? And Alex, he was supposed to be my best friend. We'd been through thick and thin together. He knew everything about me, my fears, my weaknesses. I never imagined he would do something like this. But then, who was I kidding? I didn't really know either of them as well as I thought I did. I had been living a lie, and now, I had to face the truth. The truth felt like a punch to the gut. I thought I had it all: success in my career, a beautiful wife, a home that we had built together. But now, everything was in pieces. My trust? Shattered. My heart? Crushed. I couldn't even look at the house the same way. It felt empty. All the memories, the times we'd laughed, the promises we made to each other, they meant nothing now. I wasn't just angry, I was humiliated. I'd been living in a fantasy, believing in something that wasn't real. But that didn't matter anymore. I had to focus. I had to keep my head in the game. I couldn't let the betrayal take over. If I let my emotions run wild, I'd be just like them, weak. No, I was better than that. I wasn't going to let them win. Not like this. I pulled out my phone and started looking through it. I needed to gather everything. I needed proof. I couldn't just confront them without the hard evidence. I scrolled through text messages, looking for anything that could give me a lead. I had to be thorough. I couldn't afford to miss anything. I knew Alex, he was the kind of guy who thought he could talk his way out of anything. But this time, I wasn't going to let him. I wasn't going to give him a way out. The texts were incriminating enough. They were practically an admission of guilt, but I needed more. I needed to make sure there was no way for them to deny it. I dug deeper, pulling up old hotel receipts, looking at payment histories. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. They had been planning this for who knows how long. How many times had they lied to me? How many nights had I been sitting at home, trusting her, while she was with him? The thought made my blood boil. But I couldn't lose my cool. Not yet. I needed to keep my composure. I wasn't going to let them see the damage they'd done. They weren't going to get the satisfaction of knowing how much it hurt me. I thought about calling Alex. I thought about confronting him right then and there. But I didn't. I knew that wouldn't help. It would just give him a chance to make excuses, to spin the story in his favor. I wasn't interested in listening to his pathetic justifications. I was going to make him feel the weight of his actions. I was going to make sure he paid for this. I pulled up the contact information for Claire, Alex's wife. I hesitated for a moment, but only for a moment. She deserved to know the truth. She deserved to hear it from me, not from some half-assed explanation Alex would try to feed her. I sent the message, attaching everything I had found: screenshots of texts, hotel bills, photos. I wanted her to see the full picture. She deserved that. As soon as I hit send, I felt a strange sense of relief. I wasn't carrying this burden alone anymore. She would know. She would understand the gravity of what Alex had done. And once she knew, there would be no going back for him. The truth was out, and there was no hiding from it. But I wasn't done yet. I still had to deal with Lily. The first hadn't spoken to her since the incident, and I wasn't sure I was ready to. I couldn't even look at her without thinking about what I had just seen. I didn't know what to say to her. I didn't know how she could justify it. But I couldn't let her get away with this either. She needed to face the consequences of her actions. I sat there, staring at my phone, waiting for a response from Claire. I knew it was coming. I could feel the tension building, the anticipation. I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. This was only the beginning. The battle had started, and I wasn't going to stop until I had my justice. The hours dragged by after I sent Claire the evidence. I kept checking my phone, waiting for her response, but nothing came through. The house was silent, the kind of silence that pressed against my chest, making it harder to breathe. My thoughts kept swirling around in a vicious loop. How could Lily do this to me? How could Alex betray me like this? I kept coming back to the same questions, but there were no answers, only pain and anger. Like a storm that wouldn't pass. The time for waiting was over. I couldn't just sit around any longer, letting them control my life. I wasn't going to let this define me. It was time to take action. I had already started gathering everything I needed. But that wasn't enough. I needed to make sure they understood the gravity of their betrayal. This wasn't just about revenge, this was about justice. It was about showing them that actions had consequences. They had crossed a line, and now, they had to face the music. I grabbed my keys, and headed to the car. I didn't even know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here. I couldn't sit in that empty house, letting the images of Lily and Alex haunt me. I had to clear my head, to think. I needed to be calm, collected. I couldn't afford to act on emotion. I wasn't going to let them see me break. I ended up driving to a bar, one I hadn't been to in a while. The place was quiet, a few regulars sitting at the bar, sipping their drinks. I didn't recognize anyone, and frankly, I didn't care. I took a seat at the far end, ordered a whiskey, and let the burn of it hit me. The alcohol did little to numb the ache in my chest, but it helped. Just enough to push the thoughts away, if only for a little while. I sat there for a while, nursing the drink, my mind running in circles. I couldn't believe this was happening. I'd spent years building my life, my career, my marriage, and it had all come crashing down in an instant. Every little detail that I had once taken for granted, now felt like a lie. I had trusted Alex with everything, my secrets, my fears, my family, and he had betrayed me. Worse than that, he had taken something that wasn't his to take. Lily was mine, or at least, I had thought she was. The whiskey burned again as I took another sip. I had always prided myself on being in control, on being able to keep my emotions in check. But this was different. This was something I couldn't control. My hands clenched into fists, and I felt the anger building inside me again. I had to let it out somehow. I couldn't keep it bottled up. It wasn't healthy, and more importantly, it wasn't going to get me anywhere. I stared at the glass in front of me, watching the amber liquid swirl around, and the anger inside me started to simmer. I wasn't going to be the victim in this. I wasn't going to let Alex and Lily walk away without feeling the full weight of what they had done. I was smarter than that. I wasn't going to go in guns blazing. No, I had a plan. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me. I was going to expose them for what they were. I finished my drink, stood up, and paid the bartender. I wasn't sure what time it was, but I didn't care. I had work to do. I needed to gather more evidence, more proof that couldn't be denied. I had to make sure there was no way they could get out of this. No excuses. No getting away with it. The truth was out there now, and it was time to make them pay. I drove back home, the city lights blurring past me, my thoughts still racing. I pulled into the driveway, parked the car, and sat there for a moment. The weight of everything I had to do pressed down on me, but I didn't back away. I was determined. I wasn't going to let them win. I walked inside, my mind still set on what came next. I went straight to the office, where I started going through old files, looking for anything that might help my case. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I needed to find something. I had to make sure that when I confronted them, there was no room for them to escape. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Claire. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. I swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. She wasn't asking for my sympathy. She wasn't looking for an explanation. She wanted to know how long her life had been a lie. I didn't answer right away. What could I say? A year? 2 years? I don't know, Claire. I didn't even see it coming. Instead, I typed out a quick response. "I'll explain everything soon. We need to talk." I put the phone down and went back to the desk, sifting through the papers. I was so close to finding something, anything, that would help me expose the truth once and for all. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was normal. It wasn't. I needed to make sure Lily and Alex understood exactly what they had done. The night dragged on, the weight of everything still hanging over me. But in the back of my mind, something had shifted. The anger wasn't gone, but it was different now. It wasn't just a reaction. It was a fire that would fuel the next steps. I wasn't just going to sit back and let them ruin everything I had worked for. No. This was my life, and I was going to take it back, piece by piece. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. The pieces were falling into place, and I was ready to make them pay. The weight of the situation was starting to settle in. I couldn't just keep staring at my phone, waiting for the world to change. I had already done everything I could, or so I thought. But deep down, I knew I hadn't even scratched the surface yet. I had to do more. I had to be more. The betrayal wasn't just something I could swallow, grit my teeth, and move on from. No, it wasn't that simple. Not anymore. This was about more than just the anger I felt. This was about making them understand that their actions had consequences. The night stretched on, and I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the images from earlier flooded back: Lily and Alex in my bed, their laughter ringing in my ears. It wasn't just a random betrayal, it was a calculated decision. They had been lying to me for far too long, and they hadn't just broken my heart, they had destroyed the life I had spent years building. But now, I wasn't going to sit around and let them get away with it. I needed to gather more evidence. I had to be prepared for whatever was coming next. I couldn't risk walking into a confrontation without knowing everything, without being able to lay it all out in front of them. I wasn't going to give them a chance to talk their way out of this. I wasn't going to give them an inch. They thought they could hide behind their lies, but the truth was already coming for them. And it was going to hit hard. I spent hours that night, searching through old records, messages, anything I could find that would prove once and for all that they had been seeing each other behind my back. I was relentless. Every little detail was a piece of the puzzle. Every text, every call, every receipt, it all mattered. And the more I uncovered, the more disgusted I became. The truth was there, staring me in the face, and it was even worse than I had imagined. I pulled up the phone records. Text after text. Calls that should have been to me, but instead, they had been to each other. I could feel the heat rising in my chest again. How could they do this? How could they keep up the charade, lying to me, acting like everything was fine while they were betraying me in the most intimate way possible? The more I dug, the angrier I became. I started to feel this burning desire to confront them, to make them face the music. But I couldn't let the anger blind me. I had to think this through. I had to be methodical. I wasn't going to be reckless. I had spent my whole life building a career, a marriage, a reputation, and I wasn't about to let them tear it all down with their lies. Not without a fight. I needed to expose them. I needed to make sure they couldn't deny what they had done. I knew what I had to do next. I had to go straight to the source. Claire, Alex's wife. I didn't know how she would react, but I couldn't worry about that. She deserved to know the truth. And she deserved to hear it from me, not from some anonymous tip, or some half-hearted excuse that Alex would throw her way. I dialed her number, my hand trembling as I pressed the phone to my ear. The call rang 3 times before she answered. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the edge in it, the sense of something being off. "Ethan," she said, her tone wary. "Claire," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You need to know something. It's about Alex and Lily." There was a long pause on the other end, and I could feel the tension building in the silence. I didn't want to drop this bomb on her, but she deserved to know. She deserved to know what Alex had been doing behind her back, just like I deserved to know what Lily had been doing to me. I went on to explain everything I had uncovered. The texts, the calls, the receipts. I laid it all out for her, piece by piece, making sure she understood the full scope of their betrayal. I could hear her breathing, and I knew she was processing everything, trying to wrap her head around the reality of it all. When I was finished, the silence on the other end of the line felt suffocating. It wasn't anger that I could hear from her. It wasn't tears. It was something colder, something sharper. And I knew that whatever reaction she had, it was coming soon. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I had no idea. I never saw it coming. The pain in her voice was palpable, and I couldn't help but feel a flicker of sympathy for her. But that wasn't my focus right now. I had my own pain to deal with. The anger was still there, simmering just beneath the surface, and it wasn't going anywhere. "Are you going to confront him?" she asked, her voice hesitant. I didn't hesitate. "Yeah. It's time." I ended the call, the weight of the conversation settling in. But now I had to prepare for the next step. I had done my part. I had given Claire the truth. Now, it was time for Alex and Lily to face theirs. I wasn't going to hold back. I had been the one left in the dark for far too long, and now, I was done being the victim. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but one thing was certain. I wasn't walking away from this until I had made them understand the consequences of what they had done. They thought they could hide, but they were wrong. The truth always comes out, and when it does, it doesn't ask for permission. It takes no prisoners. And as I sat there, waiting for them to make their move, I knew this nothing would ever be the same again. The silence after my conversation with Claire was deafening. I had just unleashed a bomb, and I wasn't sure how it would all unfold. My hands were still shaking, my mind running 100 miles an hour as I sat there, staring at my phone. I had given Claire the truth, and now it was up to her to process it. But that wasn't going to stop me. I had already made up my mind this was far from over. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not Lily, not Alex. I leaned back in my chair, trying to steady my breathing. Every part of me wanted to rush straight over to confront Alex, to tear into him right there. But I knew that wasn't the smart play. I wasn't some wild animal who acted on impulse. I had to be careful. I had to be calculated. I wasn't just looking for a confrontation, I was looking for control. I needed to make sure that when I finally faced them, I had the upper hand. I couldn't let them see how deeply they had wounded me. I couldn't let them feel any satisfaction from watching me crumble. I stood up, pacing around the room. The house felt suffocating. Every step I took felt heavier, the weight of my thoughts pressing down on me. How had I not seen it? How had I trusted them both so completely? Alex, my best friend, the guy I thought of as a brother. Lily, my wife, the woman I had shared my life with for 6 years. I thought we had something real. Something solid. But now, it was all a lie. A betrayal. And I was left here, trying to piece together the wreckage of my life. I grabbed my coat and walked outside. The cool night air hit me like a slap in the face, and for a second, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed to get out of the house. I couldn't just sit here, letting the rage bubble up inside of me. It wasn't going to help. I needed a plan. I needed to know exactly how I was going to handle this. I drove aimlessly, the familiar streets blurring past me, my mind spinning. It wasn't just about getting back at them. No, this wasn't some petty revenge plot. This was about making sure they knew what they had done. They had taken something from me. Something precious. My trust, my love, my future. And they weren't just going to get away with it. I had to make them understand that. After what felt like hours, I found myself parked in front of a bar. It wasn't my usual spot, but I wasn't in the mood for my usual crowd. I walked in, the dim lighting, and the soft hum of conversation offering me a momentary distraction. I ordered a drink and sat at the bar, my thoughts racing again. I wasn't sure what I was looking for: comfort, clarity, something to take the edge off, but the more I tried to focus on anything other than the mess I was dealing with, the more I realized that I couldn't escape it. This was my reality now. I pulled my phone out again, checking for any messages. Still nothing from Claire. I couldn't blame her for taking time to process everything. But the waiting was starting to get to me. I couldn't just sit around, hoping for answers to fall into my lap. I needed to make sure they knew that this wasn't just going to blow over. I finished my drink and left the bar, the cold air hitting me harder this time. I wasn't going back to the house just yet. I wasn't ready to face them. I wasn't ready to face Lily, to look her in the eye and hear whatever excuse she had. But I knew it was coming. And when it did, I wasn't going to back down. This wasn't just about the affair, it was about everything that had led to it. The lies, the manipulation, the disregard for everything we had built. They were going to face the consequences. And I wasn't going to stop until I made them. I pulled into the driveway, parked the car, and sat there for a moment, gathering my thoughts. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let this consume me. I was done being the victim. I was done letting them control my life. This was my story now, and I was going to rewrite it on my terms. I walked inside, my mind already racing through the next steps. It was time to take control of this situation. I wasn't going to wait for them to make their move. I was going to make sure they knew that I wasn't going to let them get away with what they had done. No more hiding. No more pretending everything was okay. The truth was out, and now it was time for them to deal with the fallout. I grabbed my phone, opened the Messages app, and typed out a simple message to Alex. "We need to talk. Now." I hit send, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt like I was finally in control. The doorbell rang, cutting through the silence like a razor. My heart skipped a beat, my pulse quickening as I stood frozen in the hallway. It was time. This was it. I had already sent the message to Alex, the one that would make everything real. There was no turning back now. As I walked toward the door, I felt a mixture of adrenaline and dread wash over me. I had no idea how he would react, whether he'd come in angry, defensive, or even try to play the victim. But I wasn't ready to give him any room to wiggle out of it. I had my evidence, my facts, and my resolve. He was going to hear it all, and he was going to face the consequences of his betrayal. I opened the door slowly, steeling myself for whatever was about to come. There he was. Alex. Standing in front of me, his usual confident swagger replaced with something else, something harder to read. He was trying to mask it, but I could see it in his eyes. The fear. The guilt. For the first time in years, he wasn't the guy who could talk his way out of anything. No, this time, he was trapped. "Ethan," he said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We need to talk." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at him, taking a slow breath to steady myself. His smile faltered, and I could tell he was starting to get nervous. Good, he should be. This was my house, my life. And he was about to watch it all fall apart around him. I stepped aside, letting him in. There was no point in dragging this out. The sooner we got this over with, the sooner I could make them both understand just how badly they had messed up. I didn't offer him a seat. He didn't deserve that kind of comfort. Instead, I stood across from him, feeling the weight of the situation press down on my shoulders. The anger was still simmering beneath the surface, but I forced myself to stay calm, controlled. I wasn't going to let him off easy. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. "So, Alex," I started, my voice low but steady. "We both know why you're here. We both know what's about to happen." I watched him shift uncomfortably, his eyes flicking to the floor and then back to me, trying to hold my gaze. "You've been sleeping with my wife, and you thought I wouldn't find out, didn't you?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might deny it. I could see it in his eyes he was thinking about it. But I wasn't giving him the chance. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen, the texts, the hotel receipts, the pictures. It was all right there in black and white, undeniable proof of his betrayal. "I've got everything, Alex," I said, watching as his face turned pale. "There's no way out now. There's no excuse, no explanation that's going to fix this. You had your chance to come clean. But you chose to keep lying. And now you're going to pay the price for it." I could see the panic start to creep into his expression. He was trying to hold it together, trying to act like he was still in control. But it wasn't working. The facade was crumbling, and it was only a matter of time before he realized he couldn't escape this. "Not anymore. You can't do this," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly, Alex," I interrupted, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. "I understand that you've been living a lie, and you thought you could get away with it. You thought I wouldn't find out. You thought Lily and I were just another couple, another boring marriage that didn't matter. But I'm not going to let you tear everything down. Not without facing the consequences of your actions." He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off again. "And you, Lily," the first added, my voice cold as ice. "You thought you could hide behind your lies, but I'm not stupid. I'm not the guy who doesn't see what's happening right in front of him. You both betrayed me. And now, I'm making sure the world knows exactly who you are." Alex's face turned an even deeper shade of red, his hands shaking as he tried to process what was happening. "I didn't mean for it to go this far, Ethan," he stammered. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. I never wanted to hurt you." "Too late for that, Alex," I shot back, my eyes narrowing. "You should have thought about that before you crawled into bed with my wife. You should have thought about it before you destroyed everything I thought I knew about loyalty and trust." His shoulders slumped, and I could see the realization hit him like a freight train. There was no coming back from this. There was no fixing it. His world, the one he thought he could control with charm and manipulation, was falling apart, piece by piece, right in front of him. "I'm going to make sure Claire sees this," I said, my voice steady, my mind made up. "She deserves to know what kind of man you really are. She deserves to see the truth, not some pathetic excuse you're going to try to sell her. And once she sees it, there's no going back. You're going to lose everything, Alex. Everything." I watched him squirm, his hands twitching, unsure of what to do or say. The man who had always been so confident, so smooth with his words, was finally seeing what it felt like to be caught. And it wasn't a good feeling. The room was thick with tension as we stood there, facing off. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing in on me, but I didn't flinch. This wasn't just about Alex. This was about me. This was about taking back control, making sure they both knew the cost of their betrayal. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not now. Not ever. Get out, I said, my voice hard, the finality of my words hanging in the air. Get out of my house. And don't come back until you've thought about what you've done. Alex didn't argue. He didn't say another word. He just turned, his shoulders hunched, his face pale, and walked out the door, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the silence. As the door closed behind him, I felt a strange sense of relief, but I knew the battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. I stood there, the door still closed behind Alex, and for a moment, everything felt eerily still. The adrenaline was fading, but the anger? That was still there, burning hotter now. I had sent him away, but I wasn't done. Far from it. I wasn't going to let this go, not after everything they'd taken from me, my trust, my family, my damn future. I needed to know how far this had gone. I needed to make sure that, once and for all, they understood that their actions had consequences. And if I had to make them feel it, then so be it. I walked back into the living room, my mind already turning. It was time to deal with Lily. I didn't care how hard it was, or how much it hurt. The truth had to be faced, and it was time for her to face it. I could feel the knot in my stomach tightening again. I was pissed. I was hurt. I was everything but okay. But none of that mattered. I had to keep it together. I had to make sure I stayed sharp. She wasn't going to walk away from this without understanding what she'd done. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at it for a long moment. The number was right there, staring back at me. Her name Lily. The woman I had loved. The woman I thought I knew. I hesitated for just a second, and in that second, I felt everything crash down on me again. All the anger, all the frustration, all the confusion. But I couldn't let it stop me. I couldn't let the emotions take over again. I needed to get this over with. I needed to know the truth, from her. I dialed her number, the ringing on the other end feeling like a countdown. Each second ticked by slowly, painfully. I hated the silence. I hated the not knowing. I hated that I was even in this position. It was supposed to be a simple call, but nothing about this was simple. It felt like my world was on the edge of falling apart, and I had to pull it back together somehow. When she picked up, I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the uncertainty that crept in as soon as she heard my tone. "Ethan?" she said, and I hated that she sounded so calm, so unaffected. As if nothing had changed. As if she hadn't just destroyed everything we built together. "Lily," I said, my voice low but steady. I had to control this. I had to keep my head. "We need to talk. Right now." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, trying to decide whether to fight or to just face it. "I know," she finally said. "I know what you're going to say. And I'm sorry, Ethan. Don't." I cut her off, my words sharper than I meant. I didn't want her apology. I didn't want her pity. I wanted the truth. And nothing else. "Don't apologize. You've already said enough. I know what you've done. I know everything." I heard her suck in a breath, and I could almost feel the panic spreading through her. For a split second, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. She wasn't the calm, collected woman I had thought she was. She was just as guilty as Alex, just as complicit. "I never meant for this to happen, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you. But you have to understand, things weren't the same between us anymore. I thought we were just going through the motions. It wasn't right." I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to remind her of everything we'd shared, of all the good times, of the promises we'd made to each other. But I didn't. I stayed silent. Let her talk. Let her dig her own grave. "I'm not listening to this," I said finally, my voice breaking through the chaos in my head. "I don't want to hear your excuses. You think that just because things weren't right between us, that gives you the right to sleep with my best friend? To lie to me? To tear everything we've built apart? No. That's not how this works." Her voice faltered. "I didn't think it would go this far, Ethan. I don't care what you thought," I interrupted, my fists clenched at my sides. You've already crossed that line. There's no coming back from this. I don't care what kind of justification you've got in your head. I'm done. There was silence between us. The kind of silence that screamed louder than anything else could. I could feel the weight of her guilt seeping through the phone. She knew she had lost me. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. You've already destroyed everything, I said, my voice cold and calm. And now, I'm going to make sure you and Alex face the consequences. You both think you can just walk away from this, like it was nothing? Like it doesn't matter? Well, it matters. And I'm going to make sure the world knows exactly what you did. She didn't answer right away. Maybe she was trying to think of something to say, some way to fix it. But there was no fixing it now. The truth was out. There was no going back. You're going to regret this, I said, the words hitting harder than I meant. And it's going to hurt. But it's nothing compared to what you've done to me. You're going to lose everything. Just like I did. And with that, I hung up. I stood there for a moment, my mind racing again, my heart still pounding in my chest. But there was no more hesitation, no more second guessing. This was it. I had taken the first step in making them pay. I wasn't going to let them destroy my life, not without a fight. Not without facing the consequences of their actions. The next step was clear now. It was time to make them feel it. The truth was already out there. Now it was time to make sure they couldn't run from it. The next few days felt like a blur, a chaotic mess of emotions that I couldn't fully comprehend. I was in a fog, floating between anger and disbelief, waiting for the inevitable fallout to hit. But it didn't. Not yet. I'd done what I needed to do. I had confronted Alex, exposed him, forced him to face the truth. I had done the same with Lily, ripped the veil off her lies, and made her see the depth of what she'd done. The ball was in their court now, and I was just waiting for them to react. It was a sickening feeling, not knowing exactly how this would play out. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I'd told myself that I wasn't going to let their betrayal define me. But the truth was, it already had. It was in every thought, every breath I took. It hung over me like a storm cloud, making it hard to focus on anything else. I had to keep reminding myself that I was in control now. I wasn't the one left in the dark anymore. I wasn't the one being lied to. I had exposed them both, and now they had to live with the consequences. But part of me still felt like I was in a prison of my own making, waiting for the walls to close in. It wasn't long before Claire called me. Her voice was calm, steady, but there was an edge to it. The kind of sharpness that comes from years of being betrayed, of being deceived. She knew. She knew everything. And she was angry. More than angry, she was hurt. She didn't deserve any of this, and she was finally starting to process the depth of it. She was starting to realize that Alex hadn't just betrayed me, he had betrayed her too. He had destroyed everything they had built together, just like he had destroyed everything Lily and I had built. It wasn't just about him and me anymore. It was about him and Claire, and it was about Lily and me. I listened to her for a while, letting her vent, letting her rage, because I knew it was coming. I knew how hard this had to be for her. She was my ally now. The only person who understood the weight of what Alex had done. She wasn't going to let him off the hook either. But there was a part of me, a tiny part, that couldn't shake the feeling that I should have protected her better. I should have seen this coming. I should have known what Alex was capable of. But instead, I had been so focused on my own betrayal that I hadn't thought about hers. I needed to keep it together. Claire didn't need to see my cracks, my weaknesses. I couldn't afford to let her see how deeply this had cut me. She had to see that I was in control, that I was strong. I had to be strong for both of us, because if I let myself fall apart now, what would that mean for her? What would it mean for us? The last thing either of us needed was to spiral down into the mess Alex had made. It was Claire who suggested we meet up. She needed to see me, to talk face to face, to figure out what came next. I wasn't sure what to expect when we sat down, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I knew there was no way I could just wave a magic wand and make everything go back to normal. But I also knew that whatever happened, it was going to be better than sitting in silence, letting this festering wound heal on its own. This wasn't something that could just be swept under the rug. It was time to face it, head on. I drove to the cafe where we agreed to meet, the familiar streets feeling oddly distant as I passed through them. My mind was still spinning from everything that had happened. The confrontation with Alex had been one of the hardest things I'd ever done. He had looked at me with that stupid smirk, as if he thought I wouldn't see through it, as if he thought he could still talk his way out of everything. But when he saw the evidence, when he saw how far I had gone to make sure he couldn't lie anymore, his confidence shattered. It had been a satisfying moment, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. Not until I had done the same with Lily. Not until she truly understood the weight of what she had done. I arrived at the cafe and saw Claire already sitting at a table near the back, her eyes focused on her phone. When she looked up and saw me, her face softened just a little. But there was still that underlying tension. We both knew why we were here. We both knew that nothing was going to be the same again. I sat down across from her, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was heavy, thick with the weight of everything we had just uncovered. I couldn't tell what she was thinking, but I knew she was trying to process everything, just like I was. She had trusted Alex. She had been married to him, built a life with him. But now, she was forced to face the fact that everything she thought she knew about her husband was a lie. The betrayal was even worse than I had imagined. It wasn't just that Alex had lied to me, it was that he had lied to her too. And that made everything feel that much worse. Claire was the first to speak, breaking the silence with a quiet, bitter laugh. "I should have seen it. I should have known," she said, her voice low but filled with pain. "But I didn't. I let him do this. I let him destroy everything. And now it's all falling apart." I reached across the table and placed my hand on hers, trying to offer some comfort. Some sign that I wasn't going anywhere. That we were in this together now. She had been through the same thing I had, only worse. Because at least I had the satisfaction of confronting Alex, of watching him realize the depth of his mistake. She had been kept in the dark for so long, and now she was having to pick up the pieces. I couldn't imagine how that must feel, but I could at least be there for her, in whatever way I could. "I don't know what comes next," Claire said, looking up at me with a mixture of confusion and determination. "But I'm not going to let him get away with this. Neither of us will. We can't just walk away from this. It's too big. Too damaging." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about Alex anymore. It wasn't just about him and me. It was about all of us, the lies, the betrayal, the wreckage. And for the first time since everything had started to unravel, I felt a sense of clarity. A sense that, maybe, just maybe, we could take control back. Together. "We'll make sure they pay," I said, my voice steady. "We'll make sure the truth comes out. No more hiding. No more lies." Claire nodded, and for the first time in days, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't know what would happen next. But we would face it together, and that was enough for me. For the first time, I felt like I was taking back control. It wasn't over. But it was a start. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not now. Not ever. The truth is out, and it's more explosive than I ever imagined. But here's the question. What happens when they realize their world is about to come crashing down? Will they beg for mercy? Or will they face the full consequences of their betrayal? Stay tuned, because you won't believe the final act. Trust me, you won't see this coming. Drop a comment, and tell me, how would you handle it? What I learned through this betrayal is that trust is fragile, and once broken, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. But more than that, I realized that we can't allow anyone to walk all over us, no matter how close they are. Don't ignore the signs. Don't let someone manipulate you into believing their lies. Stand up for yourself, because no one else will do it for you. Life doesn't always give us second chances, and sometimes, you have to take control of your own story. Don't let betrayal define you. Use it to become stronger, more aware, and ready to fight back.